all working was absolutely free. It was like just a feature that came with the Oculus. We were like, so what did you do last night? I went to the Warriors vs. Lakers game in my living room. Freaking fun.
I don't know if you've heard, but IT people are typically not good networkers and not particularly extroverted, although I think that's changed over time. I don't think many of us are the shove the pizza under the door type people and keep them in the back room. But really we all need IT leadership training if we want to get better at the people side. The private group, I would love to see it get more utilization. The private group is really good for vetting vendors with each other. I do not allow service providers into that group. This is really more for the leaders themselves. We do have a few service providers who attend, but they attend as leaders. So I've got people with direct reports in the room today who provide IT services, but they're showing up as a leader, not as a vendor. Asking each other leadership questions or talking about an open position that you've got, this is a great venue to do that. So I would encourage you to join if you have not already. We have a self-service mentorship program. I have a dozen IT leaders around the city who have been willing to be mentors. And if you're interested in this, hit me on LinkedIn or on email and I can send you the one-page self-service approach. You get your LinkedIn profile up to date, you write down your idea of a career journey, and then we'll connect you with one of the leaders. You agree to have 3 dates, and if there's good chemistry, you can continue on from there. If not, maybe you can choose another person in that. It's important to have mentors in your life, so I would highly encourage you to, if it's not here, find mentorship other places. It's difficult these days to do mentorship inside the company. And I'm not sure it's always the best thing to do. I think it's sometimes that disinterested third-party model is a little bit better fit when it comes to mentorship, so I'll leave that up to you. I've had many good mentors in my life. Only one of them was a boss. If you like what you see here, would like to maybe flip back through our archives, Expedient's YouTube channel is where you can find videos of these events. We've been recording now for I think 2.5 years, and it's been super valuable. I think it's been extremely important for the folks who can't make it. It's not always easy to get up here in the morning, although I think morning's a good time slot. YouTube.com/expedient/videos is where these are located. My marketing team has also pried the audio out of these meetings so that you can listen to the 30-minute talks that are featured in each of the meetings. So if you're a podcast person or if you're in the car a lot, it's an easy way to listen. It's called IT Leaders, the podcast. And transistor.fm is an easy way to get to the podcast on the podcast aggregator of your choice. Okay, this is your part of the meeting. Anyone in the room who is looking for their next position, looking for their next role? Andy?
Yeah, Andy Payne, Miller Pipeline, been there about 10 years, and at this point my role is being done away with, and so I'm actually looking for the next gig starting July 1st.
Sounds good. IT leadership, is that what you're looking for? Okay, Gloria?
Gloria Timmerman. I've been at DMI for about 10 years now. I'm our Senior Director of Microsoft 365. I'm looking for my next career in a leadership role. Doesn't have to be IT, but really enjoy leading teams and doing better.
Awesome. Anyone else?
My name is Suzanne Kacharzik.
Suzanne.
Yeah, I just got reorged from T2 Systems. They're going to implement Spotify, and they don't need director level resources at this point. I'm really good with people, though. I will tell you,
Okay.
I'm one of those IT leaders that, and I'm kind of shy about talking about myself like that, but I'm really good with people. Quality assurance, test automation, been doing it for years, and I love it. Most people don't, but I do love it. So if you need one of those, I'm available.
Thank you, Suzanne. Glenn?
Glenn Antoine. I've been doing consulting out of Chicago with West Monroe for the past couple of years. The private equity market is kind of soft right now, so I'm
Amen.
doing I've got some projects going on right now. My typical scope areas are AppSec, architecture, SDLC, and cyber. And I've been blessed to be able to do the diligence and then do coaching for the teams and the leadership following to get ready for their sale or acquisition or merger. And I've got a couple VC clients that I'm helping right now, but I'm continuing to look, maybe something more regular, where I can bring some value.
Sounds great. Anyone else? Are we missing anybody? Don't be shy, even, I guess if you're quietly looking for your next role. Okay, how about open roles in your organization? Anyone have roles to fill in their organization? Calvin?
So 6 Feet Up is currently looking for at least 2 senior Python architect or developers. We do interesting software that's never been existed before. I'd love for people to come join our team. So if people in your network are looking, you know, somebody who would benefit from an exciting place like ours, please let them know. I'll also plug real quick, June 11th is Indie Pie. Send your people to Indie Pie. I know that Doug's been a huge promoter of our meetups in the past, and it's a great way for your employees to experience some professional growth that way too.
That's Indie Pie is for Python developers. Yeah. That's where the focus is, not the number.
Or the pie, the dessert.
John.
Yeah, John Molnar from C-Spring. We're looking for a couple senior data and visualization engineers, looking for people with significant experience with the cloud and data, be that Snowflake, Azure, etc. A good strong background in Python.
It's good to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And then visualization experience in Power BI or Tableau.
The cloud, is that still a thing?
Snowflake is.
Yeah. You're looking to know Snowflake, not hire Snowflake. Okay. Thanks, John. Donnie?
Donnie Joe with McAllister Machinery. I'm looking for a technical project manager, so more on the operations side of the house, infrastructure, and also SaaS. So somebody can kind of focus on that kind of side of the house.
McAllister, great company. Anyone else? Open roles. Greg?
Yeah, I work with NPH, it's the state data analytics arm, because this is the silly season when we elect new political people. A lot of folks are taking this opportunity to bail, and we are a good training ground for people. So one of our lead data scientists, probably the best one I think I've ever met, just got accepted to a PhD program at Harvard, and so we're happy for him, but we're sad for everybody else. So then another person decided to go out in the consulting world and make about 50% more than he can for the state. So we're looking for 2 data scientists, primarily now with all the accoutrements of that position, and also a senior data analyst too. So it's a time of change in senior positions, and probably a base salary between 100 to 120, depending on years of experience, and I suppose that's living wage in Indianapolis.
And if your kids are going to college, working for the state is a great thing.
If you got student loans, if you work for 10 years, most of it gets forgiven. So
You still
Like
have
that.
pensions?
they still, yes, they do. But that's a good thing, because the people that manage the pension fund, if they're here, I apologize, but
Right
they
there.
manage about $58 billion. They have 6 different databases, and they're all trying to. None of them talk to each other, so it's kind of interesting. They just released a project to try to modernize that, so they're going to need a lot of good technology help here.
Plenty of work to do. Anyone else? Great. Louisville is our next event. It is June 11th, so only 3 weeks from today. Sue Fries from Humana is going to be talking about communication, both up and down. I sometimes think it's easier to communicate down than it is up. You can argue in some circumstances it's different. Sideways is important too, right? Talking to the business if you're in IT and vice versa. I really like Sue. She's really active in the Louisville community. If that sounds interesting to you, I would encourage you to come down. And then Angela Celebrity-Riedling will be talking about feedback and taking action. Super important skill when it comes to leadership, both giving feedback and taking it as well. So 2 great topics down there, June 11th, 8 to 10, just like here. Those events are on the off month of the Indy events, and they're the second Tuesday rather than the third Tuesday like Indy's. And then Northeast Indiana on August 6th, we have our next event. That's up at the Indiana Tech's Keene building, and I misspelled Keene in the slide I just noticed. Ron Double, Chief Information Officer for Parkview, he's been there for a long time and came up through the ranks. I like his title, don't you? Individual contributor to manager to leader. It's not that common for somebody to stay in an organization for a long period of time these days, and he's really seen it all, so he's a really interesting guy. That should be a good one as well. And then our friend Alex Perry, who's local here, will be speaking up there as well. She'll be talking about talking to the C-suite, and I look forward to that. And then the next one here in Indy is going to feature our friend Chris Mertens. Chris, where are you? There you are. Chris is our speaker, A River Rat's Journey in Government IT. I'm anxious to hear about that. Chris is with Hamilton County. And Chris Bittinger, one of the great leadership coaches here locally. Anybody know Chris here locally? Yeah, he's really amazing. Open Pivot is the name of his company. He does team leadership. He's going to be talking about a topic that maybe 1 or 2 of us have experienced, burnout. Should be a great event. I want to express, as I always do, my gratitude to my company Expedient for letting me spend my time putting together these meetings, and we've been doing it for so long now. Expedient is the type of vendor who wants to bring value to the community. And even though we're a co-location facility and one of the largest VMware cloud providers in the country, the reason we do this is to show you what sort of a vendor we are and the type of people that work with our organization. We care about your leadership journey as much as we care about your IT infrastructure. So that's why this all happens. Today's speakers, we're going to start with Adam Pryor from Subaru. Adam's going to be talking about cultivating change. Kevin Kujawa is going to speak after that. He'll be talking about performance evaluations. So Adam, it's all yours. Let me switch slide decks here and we'll be ready to go.
When I was asked to speak at this event, I was trying to think of the things that have happened over the last 3.5 years since I became group leader. And the biggest impact that happened to my team was how we have changed as a group. So one thing I wanted to put in here with a disclaimer, I want this to come across as more of a story rather than a this is how you should do things. I think there's a lot of variables to building a good team. Like to start, how many people here are 100% remote at this point? Your teams are 100% remote? Okay, that's about half the group probably. What about hybrid, working 3 2s or 2 3s? Okay, this is gonna be good. How many people are 100% on site? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we are 100% on site at this point. So that's one thing that's going to change as we talk about some of the things that I've made throughout this team. So again, more of a story. A little bit about me. I've been in IT for about 20 years now. Started off at a distribution company. Randomly fell into IT. I didn't plan on getting into IT. What was funny is my small group of friends in high school, I always called them nerds because we always did LAN parties. I always had to borrow somebody's computer because I didn't have my own, or the one I had certainly couldn't play video games. And out of that small group of friends, I'm the only one that ended up in IT. So I was working for this distribution company and going to school for business. And just because I was working out in the warehouse doing shipping and receiving, they saw as an opportunity that, hey, maybe this person would like to get in IT, and I did, and I loved it, so I changed my major. Stayed in business, but was planning on actually going into computer science, And my academic advisor actually advised me to, if I enjoy the business side, to stay on that, so I graduated with Management of Information Systems. As soon as I graduated, I started working for a managed service provider where I worked for about 2 years as a network engineer, and then became a service manager there. Wanted to relocate to Indy, at which point I've been able to come down here and work for Subaru, got me most of the way there. And I worked for 5 years as a engineer level. I think we were called specialists at the time. And then my former group leader retired, and I've been a group leader now for about 3.5 years. LinkedIn's on there, always happy to connect with people. Thought I'd put a few things up here that certainly doesn't define my career, but they are memorable experiences throughout my career. And back in 2013, I got to work with the homicide department up in South Bend. One of our assistant managers was locking up for the night, and her ex-husband was waiting outside for her. So since I was responsible for everything IT, that included the security system, and so that was a memorable impression. Ransomware event in 2019. To this day, if you Google Subaru and ransomware, you will find information on this event. It wasn't us, even though that's what the media said. All the stories come out now. It was a supplier of ours. We walked in and basically rebuilt their entire environment in a day and a half to get production up and going. But what that event taught me was how big of an impact Subaru has on the local economy in Lafayette. We had to call all of our vendors, all of our suppliers, say, if you got trucks on the road, pull them over. We can't take any more stuff because if we're not producing cars, we only have so much space for materials. So that incident happened. So, and then the good old VDI deployment for COVID. This is Bob's favorite story back there. Every single time I'm with him, thumbs up. Every single time I'm with him, he brings this up. But I had 3 days to deploy a VDI environment to support 500 people working remotely, and did it in 3 days. At the time, this particular product was in its infancy. Had it deployed all in PowerShell. Told our VP to, hey, we can test this. He followed up with an all associates email and told everybody we're ready to go. So everything went well. It all worked out, but it was a pucker moment for sure. A little bit about Subaru of Indiana. The facility started construction in 1987. Production started in 1989. The original facility was 2.3 million square feet. We have since grown to 4.7 million square feet, and we now employ about 7,000 employees. We are Lafayette's largest private employer. We have to say private because the only company bigger is Purdue. So, number one question I always get asked: how many cars can we produce in a day? The answer is 1,400 if there's no impact to supply chain or disruptions. We currently build, if you buy any new car, any new Outback, Legacy, Crosstrek, or Ascent here in the United States, it'll come from our facility here in Lafayette. The one thing I always recommend, if this kind of stuff intrigues you, you like manufacturing, you like to see big things in action, we offer free public tours. We do it during the week, 1 or 2 times a week. You can go to subaru-sia.com, little button, you can schedule it, like I said, 100% free. This is kind of the lay of the land. IS is split up into 4 different high-level groups: enterprise systems groups, production systems group, technical service group, and software development group. And my team is specifically that little systems team down there in technical services. Our responsibilities have significantly grown over the last 3.5 years. I like to say if you're good at what you do, the answer is you end up getting more work. And that certainly feels like what we have done over this last 3.5 years. Everything on the left side is what we did from the beginning, what we had supported for the 5 previous years. I became group leader. We hired a couple people, but over the last 3.5 years, we've added all the stuff on the right. I always explain our team as the team that is responsible for all data center technology. We have 2 on-prem data centers. We work with a particular co-location, I won't tell you who. And then we have 2 cloud providers now, so that has grown. And then cybersecurity remediations, even though we're not cyber, we do all remediations. 900 servers. When I started at SIA, we had about 500 servers, so that's almost double the size at this point. A lot more focus on containerization, ITSM. We work with the largest ITSM platform, and that there's a whole story behind how we ended up with that. But that is a big focus at this point. And AI highlighted that because you can't have a conversation anymore or a presentation without talking about AI. But I will say, if your company's not looking at AI, it is completely changing the way that people are interacting. Everybody from customers to developers to your own employees. And so we're in a bunch of talks right now about how we can leverage AI to the best for the company. Before becoming group leader, so when I got hired on, 5 years I worked with the current team. There was virtually no communication. We never met as a team. If we met as a team, it was 100% due to a very high-risk project going on. Software refresh, hardware refresh, that kind of stuff. But if I had to guess, we maybe met as a team once every quarter to 6 months, maybe. We were not allowed to schedule meetings. The one time in my entire career I've been yelled at is because I scheduled a meeting and I didn't get my group leader's approval with a vendor. So he always said those are seen as a waste of time, cross-team collaboration, non-existent. We were always reactive to change. Something would happen and then we would figure out how to fix it. We were not proactive in any way. Lacking vendor and partner relationships. I've got a whole slide on this later, but we never did assessments. We had poor project planning. We were never allowed to go to events. If my previous group leader was my manager now, I would not be here today. I would not be at this event because I'd have to take half the day of PTO. And then this entire dynamic created segmentation within the team, but as individuals as well. I think a lot of people and a lot of companies have the issue of siloization between teams. We had it as individuals. When I became group leader, I've seen this and I've known about this for a long time. I think somebody else actually at an IT leaders event showed this slide before. But you can't come in and make massive changes immediately right out the gate. And I've always thought of what's the best way to implement these small changes, but over time they become a massive change. And not only as a leader have I thought about this, but also if you work for a company that's not used to change, which I attribute that to us being a manufacturing company. A lot of our departments and groups are not used to a lot of change. But if you introduce a bunch of small changes, rather than waiting until something has to happen, usually you can get better adoption and more people on board with changes. This is the very first thing I ripped out because I hated it. If you deployed something in our environment, you were seen as that subject matter expert. So what that meant was you were always the person that supported it even after hours. We were on call 24/7. I can't tell you how many vacations I had to work from the beach, work from my car, work from a hotel room. I've worked on the tailgate of my truck, at a dentist's office. I've done it all, and I don't know how many 2 a.m. calls I've gotten for one thing or another having issues. Because I really did the majority of the projects for those 5 years. Also, when I got hired on, I was the systems administrator for the production of vehicles, the OT side of the network. And if anything goes down on that side, it's critical. It's an after-hours call to get it going again. But the support model was, support would have an issue, they'd call our group leader would go, oh, Adam does the production of vehicles on that side of the network, call him. And then they would call me, fix the issue. Don't know why I liked doing that. I hated it, and it just added time to getting a resolution going. So the first thing I did was deploy a calendar that's available to all of information systems. And there's just a scheduled rotation in that calendar. It's got the person's cell phone number, home phone number, if that's still a thing. We got one person that has a home phone number still. But if anybody needs anything from information systems, this calendar is available to all of them. Took group leader out of the process. I certainly didn't want to field a call in the middle of the night just to say, hey, call the person that's on call. So that was the point of the calendar. Now what this also means is that instead of somebody being a subject matter expert, we all have our things that we're better at and we are kind of leaders for the team at. It is expected that everybody has a foundational set of skills. Everybody understands our infrastructure. Everybody can, knows our services and check accounts, and we have multiple domains. But there's that foundational set of skills that we do a lot of cross-training now on to make sure that people are set to us to support our systems. This is our team. We do daily stand-ups. This was one of the first things I implemented because there's a lot of things that can come out of
just having a conversation of what's going on that day, what kind of changes are being done, are there any kind of high-risk projects that are going on, and any changes. We've also discovered that on multiple occasions, somebody has submitted the same ticket 2 different times, and we had 2 people working on the same issue simultaneously. So having daily stand-ups is just really quick, really brief. There is no super strict model. Number one, as we do it at 8:45 in the morning. As soon as my watch hit 9 o'clock, we're wrapping it up. The point is just be really quick, brief, not supposed to take a long time. That's a big reason why standing up is important. If people are sitting down, you have a tendency to just kind of sit back and you're relaxed, and that's not the point. The other thing is it's very easy when you're sitting in front of your computer to start clicking that mouse and checking Teams messages and Outlook and all that stuff. So I purposely make sure that we stand up. The battle board. Implemented that about the same time. It's the whiteboard behind me. It's got all of our priority tasks and projects and things that we're working on. It's got ETAs on it, who's working on it. But it's a good visual representation of when we walk in the office and we see that standing right in front of us, right next to our desks, and we're looking at it all the time. One-on-ones. I have changed how I do one-on-ones so many times over the last 3 years. As a company, we're only required to sit with our directs 1 time a year. Even back when I was an engineer, I knew this wasn't enough. I didn't feel like there wasn't a good communication between myself and my supervisors because of that. I can also tell you that I've had multiple reviews and I was never actually sat down like you're supposed to. So it's very easy to be like, oh, here's your review, let me know if you got questions. And that was certainly happening. I'll go into more about the whole as needed or open door policy. It's one of those nails on a chalkboard for me anyway, because I think that is a very reactive approach to your employees. The one-on-ones, initially, I had it very structured to talk about people's tasks. I had, okay, what are you working on? What's the status of this? Where's this project at? And what I've learned over the years is that doesn't work. Not to say that we don't talk about tasks and projects, because we do, but it's not just about that. It is actually about building a relationship with that employee. Back to the time, you can't build a great relationship with somebody if you meet with them once a year. So I've changed that now to 30 minutes once a week. It's also officially on the calendar. It's not like I wait until I have a day where I've got some free time and I start emailing people or messaging people and say, hey, I've got some time this afternoon, you want to meet? I have it in the calendar because it's official. There's some designated time to sit with me and I can have that conversation. The first thing I thought about when I thought about going to this model was that sounds like a lot of time. I've got 7 people that report to me, so that's a lot of time. But if you look at it over the course of a year, that's dedicating 3 days to an employee, which really in the grand scheme of things is not a lot of time. Also, this is being proactive. I don't know how many things where an issue will get brought up in those one-on-ones before it becomes a problem. Because if somebody's calling you or saying, hey, we need to have a one-on-one today because we have an issue, it's already a problem. And the point is to be proactive about those. And a lot about the communication things that I've done over the last few years is really about just being proactive about situations. Weekly team syncs. This is something that we always did at the managed service provider that I worked at, so it was really weird to walk into a team that we didn't have any kind of a team sync. So as soon as I became group leader, this was another thing that I implemented. This format has changed throughout the years, but the first thing that we always discuss is who's on call. We found that somebody's on call the following week and they, I don't want to say accidentally, but they scheduled PTO or have something scheduled and they're not going to be able to support on a Thursday or something. So we make sure that we have proper coverage that reflects in the schedule so that if somebody does have PTO or somebody has a personal thing, they can handle that without having to worry about the help desk calling them or having to open up your laptop and work on the tailgate of your truck at a dentist's office. We go over all of our broken SLAs. Accomplishments completed, I've actually changed that. That used to be all of the work that we had worked on that week. And it was somebody in an IT leaders event that said that their senior management didn't really care so much about what we worked on, it's more about what they accomplished. So I've since changed that to accomplishments. And it's shortened up a little bit, but that still can end up being a lot of time. And I end any team meetings, any one-on-ones, I always end it with, does anybody need something from me? I want to make sure that if somebody's waiting on me, that I get it addressed. If it's something that's like, oh yeah, I do remember you saying that to me last week and I totally dropped the ball on it, I always make that a priority because I hate that feeling. Remove technical cross-training. Technical cross-training used to be in our weekly syncs. I had like 15, 20 minutes carved out for it, but that was clearly not enough time because if we had something to discuss, we quickly ran over half of the meeting just with technical training. But this is an opportunity, as we talk about those foundational set of skills, supporting hypervisors and knowing our environment and the different applications and platforms that we manage and support. This is the time to cross-train the individuals and the rest of the team. I let the directs also control the topic and the flow of the meeting. Usually every week we have something to discuss. Things change very often. Not only are we deploying new stuff all the time, but we're doing upgrades. And as soon as you do an upgrade, there's new commands that you can run, or you have to change your automation jobs, and all of that gets discussed in these technical power sessions, as we call them. This is by far the most difficult meeting that I have had to deploy because this is for the entire department. But I'm pushing it as a group leader of the systems team. So there's 8 other groups, where I'm not, or 7 other groups really, that I'm not their supervisor. So we have a whole change control process now that I will say is loosely followed. My team follows it because I make sure that they understand they have to follow it. There should be no change ever made to any production system without a change control ticket submitted. And then you have a whole conversation around, well, what constitutes a normal change for standard? And I always say normal changes don't require approvals. So if it's something that you would like to have kind of some coverage where if something breaks, you can at the end of the day say, hey, Adam approved this change to be done at 1 in the afternoon, and if it broke something, I can kind of cover for them. So that's kind of how we dictate that. Also the notification. Sometimes there's changes where it's like it'd be good for the change advisory board to get the notification, then you want to put in standard request. All ITIL best practices. We do weekly meetings. I say they're required, but some people think that they're kind of optional, so we're kind of in that phase right now. And we focus on weekend changes and high-risk changes, things that could potentially take a system down. That way, if a website goes down, it's like, oh yeah, they were doing some kind of maintenance, even though it wasn't expected to cause an issue. At least them knowing that this change is going on, they know that this could have potentially impacted it. Vendor partner relationships, completely non-existent. We never met with, let's just say an Expedient, we never met with them. I didn't know who our account reps were. I didn't know who our sales engineers or architects were, which is completely different now. And I found that a good relationship with your partners is absolutely crucial because there's a lot of tools that are offered for free. I'm a sucker for assessments. I am really a partner's best friend because I'm always willing to do assessments because I always think about that quote right there. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. You can't fix something that you don't know is broken. So you might think you're doing a perfect job, but these assessments will find those gaps and issues. And then you just got to determine, all right, this is a high priority thing that we have to fix, or put it on the priority list. Or you just say it's an accepted risk. If it's something that you know about and it's just like we can't get to that, it's an accepted risk at that point. I'm very proud of this chart. I made this. If anybody hasn't seen this, I'm going to go copyright this right now. So I wanted a visual representation of where I wanted our team to focus on their time. Because what I found is people go down in the weeds of some project or something and their time was just getting sucked and absorbed, and we weren't able to meet our daily demand for what we needed to accomplish. So that's where we always want to focus, and there's 2 areas of the graphs that spend a lot of time on. If they're not very challenging, but they take up a lot of time, those I always say are your automation tasks. Those are typically the things that you can try to automate. We shouldn't be adding people to groups anymore. We shouldn't be doing all these basic tasks that we can use PowerShell or Python to automate. Then you got the other side. Extremely challenging and a lot of time. Those are your high-end projects that either staff augmentation would help or professional services. One of my direct's favorite movies is Twister, and that's Dusty from Twister. And he's talking about the suck zone of a tornado. That's the suck zone for time. And then setbacks. One-on-ones, I've changed it multiple times, started out as needed, then I went to quarterly, and then I really used one-on-ones as a form of discipline, and I kind of found out that's not really the way about it. It really is, again, to work with the employee and improve that relationship. So I also took an employee off the on-call schedule because of an incident that happened. This person didn't answer their phone when an incident happened. Then they knew about the incident. They knew that it was ongoing, and then they didn't answer their phone again. So I was like, well, this person needs to be taken off the on-call schedule. Horrible decision. Because then instead of holding the person accountable, we basically changed his job description by saying, no, you don't need to be on call. You're not going to get those calls at 2 in the morning like everybody else is. So it just made work for the other team, or the rest of the team, and we have since put them back on the on-call schedule and kind of hold them more accountable. Kind of what I talked about with that initial chart, with the things that we initially worked on the left, and then what we're working on now. We have taken on a lot of additional work, and if you don't prepare for that appropriately, you have a difficult time if you're being reactive to situations because of all the additional work that has been created. You have a difficult time keeping up with the newer stuff and the newer changes and being proactive. And the first thing that always suffers in our case is always documentation and training. That's a high focus. I think everything needs to be documented. And I think training is really important so that people are getting out and doing things. And I'm meeting 2 of my employees after this for a little training tabletop exercise. It's really important. And I want to make sure that I try to encourage that. What's next? Something that I had suggested before I became group leader was to have a clearly defined career path. We have a lot of people on maybe like our desktop team that is, they're usually new, younger, looking to do better. They end up working on that team for usually a year or 2, and the good ones end up leaving because they have another opportunity to go somewhere else and do something else. I've always wanted to kind of set some expectations where, hey, if you want to get in cybersecurity, these are the kind of certifications we're looking for. This is the kind, you can expect to be on this team for the next 2 years because we want at least 2 years of experience in IT. And in that time, if you know that somebody is trying to go down that path with their career, you can kind of have them focus on those kinds of tasks, right? I mean, we have tons of desktop remediations. If somebody wanted to get in cybersecurity, we could keep an entire person busy every day easily. Try to get more senior management buy-in. I think that's my biggest issue with the change advisory stuff and the change control. Even though I have approval from our upper management to do all this, again, all of these requests are coming from me, not them. So I need to focus more on that. Working on additional resources, talked about that. Enforce the process. It is extremely easy for things to slip back to where it's the same person working on the same stuff because they're really good at it. So just for the sake of time and efficiency, just the same person's going to work on the same stuff all the time. And I have to constantly kind of be on them. It's like, oh, well, who worked on that? Oh, the same person I worked on before. We need to make sure that we cross-train more on that. That happens all the time. Push for more certifications, same thing. I think training's important. I would love to see, and I've mentioned this, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere at Subaru, but I know certain companies that if you want to reach your maximum potential for your merit increase, you have to be certified, and you have to either renew certifications, and there's financial benefit to it. Some people get bonuses if they pass a certification. I'd like to see that because I think it promotes actual training and making sure that it's being fully absorbed. We can assign, we have a company that we do self-paced training. People can watch videos all day long, but who knows if they absorb it, and I think that's really what the certification kind of shows. And then managing the cultural differences between teams. I've had a handful of different tasks and projects. It's been requested to kind of hold back on, not because we need to do it, but because other teams are not keeping up, and I can't progress until another team's ready. So balancing us progressing while at the same time not making other teams mad is it's a balancing act. Summary and final thoughts. This DISC test, who has done a DISC test? Just out of curiosity. Oh, okay, well. So this isn't new to everybody in here. What that helped me do is it made me understand how I kind of act based on my personality. And one thing that I am is I'm very direct when it comes to messages and stuff. Sometimes that can come across as a little abrasive or a little angry. And when I'm not, it's just I'm just trying to focus on the problem. So that's just one thing that I'm currently checking myself on. I always think about this. Train people in a way that they can go anywhere and do anything, but treat them in a way that they won't want to. I've always felt that because we don't push for certifications, because we don't really push for that self-improvement, it's a way of kind of pigeonholing a person into a career and into a path. And I certainly didn't like the feeling then. Because if you treat somebody appropriately, they won't want to leave in the first place. Ultimately, you should always do what's best for the associate. I've had multiple conversations. Right now I've got an intern. He was a high school intern, actually. He did a high school internship program where he worked for half a day, I think 2 or 3 days a week on our team. I got to grade him and everything. It was fun. But there was a time where he told me what he was making, and he said he had a friend doing an internship at Target making almost 60% more than him. And I'm like, all right, well, just think about the long-term plan here. I mean, there's a long-term goal here, and you're going to be meeting your goals for your career. But there came a point where this intern started getting really good at what he was doing, and he was certainly more valuable. And I told him, I said, if this doesn't work out, I want you to kind of see what's out there, because I know you can do a lot better financially than what we were offering. If this conversation with HR didn't go right, talked to HR, and in 5 minutes I doubled his salary because of everything. They didn't know that he had become a college intern at that time, and we have 2 different programs, so it worked out. But I was ready and prepared to, even though I didn't want to lose this person, to fully support him going somewhere else. Open door policy or as needed doesn't work, because if a direct is coming to you for an issue, it's already a problem. So I already kind of talked about that, but again, I hear that now. I hear so many people talk about that. Well, I have an open door policy, and it sounds great, but it really doesn't work. Azure Indy, quick shameless plug. Azure Indy Group, we started it. The first meeting we had a couple months ago, completely standing room. It was a great turnout. Our next one is Thursday, June 6th, all about Power Platform. And everything coming out with Power Platform. So we've also got a panel. I've got 2 people. We'd like to fit 4 slots. So if anybody is knowledgeable in Power Platform on your teams or you, would love to have you there and be on the panel. I thought I'd end everything with having a great supervisor is a blessing. My career, I've had some good supervisors, but I've never had what you'd call a mentor. I've never had somebody that has pushed me to do better. It's always, luckily I'm kind of self-motivated, but it would have been a lot easier of having somebody there kind of guiding me, showing me. We have the opportunity to impact people's lives personally, and then of course professionally. And I think about that all the time, and that goes back to making sure that you're doing the right thing for your people, and everything else just falls in line. The first thing I wanted to ask, is there anything from a communication standpoint that I didn't cover that somebody else is doing that you find very beneficial for your team? I get it.
Just changing up the scenery on a one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
Did a lot of walking.
Yep.
Walking seems to be a way to open people up, especially more engineer-oriented, introverted type people, because you're not necessarily maintaining eye contact.
Yep. 100% do that as well. Didn't cover it, but we do have a conference room that's kind of there, but sometimes we meet out in the lobby. I was out for a conference a couple weeks ago in Vegas with somebody. We did it walking the streets of Vegas. We had a little one-on-one. So, yeah, absolutely. Okay, doing everything right.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead.
You talked a lot about relationships, and I could see, and I could tell from the way that you were talking about it, it really does mean a lot to you. But I also caught some of the tension that exists between yourself and some peers, perhaps. You talked about the cultural changes, you talked about the CAB meetings and things like that. What kind of steps are you seeking out? What are you probing at to get your upper leadership to talk to their peers, to have that work its way back down? And you see where I'm going?
Yep. I'm having conversations with them. What I'd like to do moving forward, and that's part of what I want to do moving forward, is making sure that if we want to enforce those CAB meetings, I want them to send the emails out. I would like for them to send it out to those other group leaders and the people in the CAB, not me.
And what are you doing as an individual, though, with your peers at that level? Reach out?
Yeah, same thing. We talk, but it's amazing still how many things we'll meet, but then like within an hour or two after the meeting, they'll say, "Oh, we're making this change." It's like, "Well, we had to cover because the whole website's going down for like half a day or something." It's like, "Oh, that would have been worth a conversation." But yeah, and there's good communication there. But at the end of the day, me asking somebody that's a group leader of another team, it's really up to them if they want. I can't force somebody to do it, where I think if it came from our senior management or their managers to help support that, I think that's the difficult thing right now that I have to balance. But for sure.
Are you modeling that back? Sorry.
I'm going to piggyback off of you, actually. So Subaru is a Japanese company.
Yes.
How much of that red tape do you think is cultural, and how much do you think is just relationship based?
I purposely left that out, but that's 100% I think a thing too. So we are a Japanese-based company. We have a parent company, but they have no oversight on us. We kind of do our own thing. They do audit us and audit certain processes, but we are kind of allowed to do our own thing as we see fit. So what's kind of funny is what I've noticed is it seems like Japan is actually like a little bit behind us, and I think what they're doing is they're letting us go forward and finding out what works and then using that to kind of use for their models. So that's what it seems like. But it certainly does play a role, for sure.
Do you use agile methods at all?
I'm a big fan of Agile, just because there's so many projects that we start, and it's like, okay, well, this is the plan, but then by the end of that project, that plan completely deviated. So I'm always expecting change within a project. So I do. Can't speak for other teams and what they do for their projects. I think they're a little more rigid, but I certainly do. Yeah.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm going to talk a little bit, Doug, I'm going to correct you a little bit on this. My talk's not going to be so much about giving performance evaluations. It's really how your executive team or your board of directors or your investment group is evaluating leadership performance. How they're not delivering in that, but what they're looking at is part of their discussion. So I'm going to try to peel back the curtain a little bit. So a little bit about my background. I'm Kevin Kudrawa. I'm the CIO of Allied Benefits, not Allied downtown Carmel. I always get confused with that company. We're actually the largest independently owned TPA in the country. It was nominally based in Chicago. We have an office there that no one goes to. 100% remote. And interestingly enough, this company had all their operational folks go remote 7 years ago, way prior to COVID, just to save costs. Very profit-driven company, or value-driven company, and they recognize that. That was something, I wished to do in other companies that just fell flat, but they had that. So COVID was a non-event. I joined that company after that, about 2.5 years ago, but I replaced a long-term consulting firm that was running IT for over 25 years, and just lots of technical debt, no infrastructure, a lot of projects going to the list and dying, as prior speaker described. So in the last 2 years, we've done a remarkable job. I've hired a great team. Went from basically no IT folks to 47 full-time IT people. And really have turned the IT, and I don't want to pat myself on the back too. I was with the help of great leaders I hired. Expedient was a great partner in this. We went from 2 sadly run data centers to Expedient, and very, very glad that happened. I do recognize some of you from the Indy CIO meetings. I am part of that. I'm available. That's a great group. If you haven't participated in the Indy CIO group, you might want to look at that team too. And I see a lot of my former colleagues here from the previous role I had. I'm glad to see that they're involved in this meeting because I think this is very great, good feedback for and input for your career advancements. So I'm not going to read the screen to you, but the reason I put it up there is, we just heard a great example of this. All the past constraints of IT and the new operating model has really changed the way how you're evaluated. So we went from, we're constantly changing in IT. That's what's unique to this. You didn't go into marketing or finance or these other professions that, hey, you learn how to sell, you can sell, right? You learn finance, you can do finance anywhere. But IT is constantly changing, as you know. So this modern approach will be old 2 years from now, 3 years from now. So that's the reason I'm presenting this. I'm sure you've had speakers talk about all these things ad nauseum, so I won't spend a lot of time there. And you can get this in your slide deck. We'll talk about it. We'll deliver that after the meeting. So the reason I'm saying this is IT is the business. There's not anything that goes on in your company now. It's not come through the IT department. And that's, again, increasing the focus, the pressure, the attention on IT leaders. How many of you have gone to your company awards or your quarterly recognitions? And everyone stands up, oh yeah, my marketing department just installed a new CRM and blah, blah, blah. And we get reports out and they get all the credit for the CRM. And then someone else gets credit for the new finance system. And your IT sitting there. I don't remember those guys being there 3 weekends in a row, or answering the call 24/7, or any of this. But you grin and bear it. But you're the main cog in the wheel for all these projects. So, and that is now how executives are starting to look at you as seriously driving the business. IT is no longer a necessity. It is part of the driving of the future of the business. So how are executives? I'm a board member, chief. We have some other chiefs in here. We get in the room several times a year, and we talk about budgets, personnel, IT, results. And you're talked about, just to be frank with you. And these are some of the areas that you're probably being measured on. So do you have impact on the company's value? And what I mean by value, I mean profitability. You could call it growth, price, productivity, but it really comes down, are you contributing to the valuation of the company? Now, I'm skewing my conversation a little bit because we are private equity owned, so valuation is very important. But it should be important to all companies. I'm sure Subaru is driven just as much as a private equity firm on valuation and profitability. And I must say, just an aside, I wish I would have gotten with private equity companies earlier. I'd always heard horror stories that there's a slash and burn. They come in and just strip the company of its assets. Either I'm in a very lucky situation where I ignored it for far too long. So don't be afraid to work for a private equity company, in my opinion. They're investing, especially in IT now, to drive that value in the company. The next point, do you have a high say-to-do ratio? So you come to tell your executives, hey, I'm going to make sure we get into Expedient Cloud in 6 months from now. And here's the plan. And then you come in 5.5 months later and go, you know what? I don't think I'm going to get to Expedient for another 3 months because I had other things come up. That's far too late. You know, when you say something, you got to do it, right? And the perception of IT has in history been, you know, I'm going to steal this term from someone else I heard this from. IT eats like an elephant and shits like a bird. That means it takes in all the money and produces little, right? Because all the things we do in the middle of the night on the weekends is just lost on everyone else, you know. It's just Monday morning and all the systems are working. So the other way you can improve your perception is come in front of the CFO. Constantly evaluate your spend, vendor shop, you know, but stick with, try to get as few vendors as you need. Get a vendor that can do multiple things for you, is my recommendation. So again, you're managing fewer contracts, and when you have more leverage if you have a bigger spend with those companies. And are you doing return on investment studies? There's nothing that gets the attention of CEO more than, hey, you know that project that you finally gave me that $100,000 for? Well, here's the ROI on it. Within 6 weeks, we were able to, or 6 months, we were able to recover that. And the third really big point that you're probably measured on is peers that depend on you, because there's other people other than the CIO in this executive room or boardroom discussing you. There's the COO, there's the CFO, there's the marketing people. Are you delivering for those departments? A lot of the time they might not realize you're supporting them, so they won't have a good idea of what your contribution is. So getting with your peers and describing what you're going to do for them and being that source of information is very important. Don't shut them off. You know, I know meeting with other directors and managers in other departments can sometimes be tedious, boring, off the point, but develop that relationship and really explain to them what you do and how it delivers what they want. I used that CRM example at the beginning. Get with the person that wants a CRM. Tell them all the work you're doing to move that forward so they appreciate that. So when it comes to time, when the budget time comes around, they know, you know, we can't live without those people. We need to budget that team. So, also cost reduction. Again, I mentioned a little bit about, you know, vendor shopping, other cost reduction methods, but that's something you really have to focus on. And of course, delivering effective solutions is, you know, no explanation needed. So how do you drive value? I'm going to go over a couple of examples of driving value. If you employ some of these techniques, you'll probably get recognized a little bit better in the boardroom. So do you have a decentralized IT organization? And this is where I talk about fragmented tech stack, IT resources scattered throughout the company. Probably don't want to do that. Again, centralizing folks, bigger teams, less fragmentation is the way to go. This one could be a little provocative. I'm not a huge fan or user of global talent, but a lot of companies are. Some of your companies might be. Some of your boards might think that it's a magic pill to shift work out of the country. If you don't use global talent, have a reason why you don't, and have some numbers backing you up. and say, hey, I've done this before, it didn't work, here's the numbers, I can do it with this, 3 full-time people based here, they'll have more skin in the game, we'll turn it around faster, we'll have better support. But executives are always looking for that cost-cutting bullet, and global talent is one of those. So evaluate what roles you can maybe nearshore or offshore or outsource, and but have a reason if you don't. Contracting should be very strategic. So it's not only about oh, I've got the best in breed in all these 20 different classes of IT. But again, your contracting people should also be your a very close partner of yours. Rather than as a pain in the butt to do the contract, you should be very involved in that contracting negotiation and get the contracting team or your sourcing team to back you up and become partners with them and have them look at what they should be looking for in a good partner. We talked a little bit about disparate use of technology vendors. This one, again, significant overhead. This could be a little provocative too. But I can almost guarantee every cycle that comes around for the budget, they're going through your staff, and they're not looking at staff by title or department. They're looking at salaries. And they're sorting the salaries, and they're asking your CIO, how come these people are making this much money, right? Why is this person paying $30,000 more than this person here for the same role? Some of that, again, can be explained away as they're great contributors, but not everyone is in that box. So you have to take a serious look at your staff and say, look, that person's been an engineer for 15 years, I'm paying them X. Their productivity is the same as someone that's a 1-year person. So it's up to you to really add value to your company, to have that serious thought of, am I going to replace this person with a lower paid person? And that's part of your job as an IT leader, to have those difficult discussions with people when you have to eliminate their position or ask them to move on because it's not the right fit. But that is something that is discussed every day, and you're going to be measured on it at some point in your career, of managing that kind of salary. You can't keep everybody for 20 years. It just doesn't happen. Everyone in this room knows that. Probably been through it once or twice, either as the recipient or as the deliverer of the news. All right, too many middle managers, and we'll talk a little bit about management in general, but again, how many of you are also, you're all in leadership roles, but how many of you are still doing the day-to-day hands-on keyboard stuff? Some, yeah. You should really be a people leader, and some companies say they have people leaders, but they're still promoting individual contributors, as you know, to middle management, and there's too many of them. And they often use that management title as a way to get you more compensation, rather than doing the right thing and keeping you in a technical individual contributor role. And the reason you want fewer middle managers is you want the managers focusing on value creation, profitability, execution, and not on the system's down. I've got to run away from this meeting and go fix it. How many of your companies have grown through acquisition? And how slow or no integration has there been? This is probably the biggest spot to provide value back to your board. It's looking at integration points, it's looking at redundant staffing, even if it means taking on more work for yourself. That is probably leaving the most value on the table in my mind of ways to drive value. And then, of course, we can't talk about AI. You've probably had 15 AI discussions already at this group level. At our company, our private equity firm has about 40 companies underneath it. At our CIO, CTO meeting, it was pretty much just laid out. You're doing AI. And again, recording, I can't share too much, but you know, it's gotten to the point, if you're not doing something with AI, you're going to fall behind. I really believe, and to me, it's just not saying you're going to do AI seriously, because this is the one technology that we've heard all the buzz about that I really think is going to finally pay off. You know, we went through big data and all kinds of other stuff. Gartner comes up with a new buzzword every year. You know, I remember the first Gartner meeting I went to, the Windows operating system on the phone was going to be the big thing, right? And yeah, it just didn't pan out. And it was just like a year before Apple just took everything by storm, so they were way off on that one. But do something with AI. That's all I'm asking you. Otherwise, your bosses are going to say, "Hey, you failed here. You didn't bring an AI here. Our competition did. You're out, and you got to start over." And of course, non-optimal use of office space. This affects, manufacturing is a little bit different. But do you have data centers hanging out all over the country? You might want to centralize those, and if you haven't gone to the cloud yet, you need to. I came from a company that used to have the position that it was nice to have a data center so they could show, salespeople could show on a tour. But everyone's got a data center. What's so special about ours? But is it the control of having the data center and the perception that you have more control over your own data center than you do over the cloud? You got to get over that if you're still in that mode. All right, so span of control. We talked about middle managers, and we talked about people leaders, and how many people do both people leadership and hands-on keyboard. You really want to focus on the size of the team underneath the management group. These are numbers off our some of the portfolio companies within our company, and during a survey, this was the span of direct reports to different managers within different departments. So you can see the span of application development, 3 direct reports up to 10. As you can see, big range, but the optimal decided by our company, or recommended by our company, not forced on us, but this becomes the optimal size, so skewing to the higher end. And why is that? If you have a lot of teams of 3 or 4 people, you don't have a lot of control. You have to coordinate decision-making across a larger group of people. You might not be able to attract the strong leaders that you want, because I'm a director and I have 8 direct reports. Why would I come to a company and have 3, right? So, and again, that leads to cost savings because there's fewer middle managers, but you have that money now to employ more engineers. And then part of that previous slide about span of control is because of this. Unstructured job titles and career paths, right? So Doug alluded to it earlier, we promote until Peter Principle, you can't do the job anymore. So individual contributors are sometimes given management titles like associate director or director, but they're still basically just your best engineer. So you really have to employ two different paths, you know, and people have to make that decision earlier in their career. I was talking to Mike here, and he was, I think, surprised, maybe because of my youthful look, that I had been a CIO for 25 years. But it's because early in my career, I decided that, geez, I don't want to be a COBOL programmer anymore. I'm going to get an MBA and get on the business end. And that's when MBAs meant something. Don't go out and get an MBA. That's old school. But you have to make that choice. Am I going to be a people leader, or am I going to stay a technology contributor? And this is a career path I helped develop at a previous company, but I now employ at my current company as well. And just to give you some ideas of kind of the experience position and the equivalent titles. So when I came to my current company, we had 3 people in senior director roles that really had nobody reporting to them, right? They were definitely individual contributors. So 25 years plus experience, one had 34 years of experience. So they're all senior directors. So they are now principal contributors. So we have changed their title, changed their expectation. Didn't have to change their pay because they're in the same pay band. And so a lot of companies, and this is something you'll have to work with your leadership on, is a lot of companies will have a different pay band for this line than this line. And that shouldn't be the case. A senior software engineer should be able to make as much as their boss if they're contributing. So that pay band should be the same. Oh. And then global talent. And again, not my favorite topic, but I thought it was important because it is important at a lot of other companies. So it is a more flexible and cost-effective workforce. I'll give you that. It does give you the ability to retain knowledge workers because even it might not be the exact individual. If you have a single third-party partner, you get that value if they have the same bench of engineers. You can flex up and down a little bit easier. You don't have layoffs or firings. I do agree this is something that could be a positive. A lot of these organizations that you can outsource to have a large footprint, thousands and thousands of engineers, and they've created innovations, right? So that might be a good partner for AI or robotics, robotic processing automation. So they may have tools that your company can't afford. So this might be an opportunity for you to outsource. And then financial predictability based on the contract. What I don't have on here is predictability of your projects, because I don't believe that's the case. I still think there's a strong, I have a strong bias at least for internal engineering teams to meet deadlines. And again, global talent mix. The survey said, some companies have as low as 12% engineers, up to 72%. But, this particular study recommended much higher optimal percentages than were currently being performed by our portfolio companies. You'll see security, though, and PMO less so, being seen more as a core competency.
Kevin, have you run into a situation, or do you find vendors are either staff augmentation or they're highly consultative, more consulting basis? Because I've run into a situation where the expectation was they were consulting, but they were really more staff aug. And
Yeah,
staff
there-
aug requires a whole different set of rules when you're working with them as a vendor versus a consultant partner.
Right.
but-
And I'm leaning more towards staff augmentation, I guess, on
Okay.
my presentation, rather than typical consultant.
Okay.
That's going to tell you how to do it. They're coming in to help you
Yeah.
perform. So
Okay.
I probably should have said lean more on the staff.
So you like to have your talent be within your team
Yes.
as opposed to outsourcing for consulting purposes?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other? That was a good question because that leads into my last slide. So, any other questions or comments?
Kevin, how do you see the investor influencing the work that you're doing positively or negatively? You mentioned that you like the private equity model. We've seen times where they exert undue influence and prescribe things that aren't necessarily good.
Yeah, and again, I might be lucky with the organization I'm with.
Yeah.
But if you are able to show your high say-do ratio, if you're able to show value, they're willing to invest more. I mean, I go to board meetings, I'm asked, can we add a couple more engineers to get that project going even faster? Because they want the ROI sooner.
Yeah.
So in a lot of cases, I come out of the board meeting more flush than I went in, right? Because if you have that track record of doing what you say you're going to do, they're going to pay attention to that, because it all comes down to that bottom line. Are you providing ROI, value to the company? Are you eliminating technical debt, getting more modern, introducing new technologies, eliminating manual work? And if you can show that ROI, they'll be more than willing, in my opinion, willing to listen to you to help you push things along.
Any other questions for Kevin?
Andy?
So quick one from your experience sitting on the board level, how do you want the risk level communicated to the board? You don't want to cry wolf, but how do you want that risk to be communicated?
I didn't go into that, but that's whole nother board discussion. That'd be a good future one, actually.
I like that.
Okay. So the board doesn't typically want to hear about risk, and your CEO doesn't want you to tell the board about risk. Right? Because they want to sugarcoat everything's great, we're on the right path, security's awesome. Right? I will tell you this, you have to be honest and share risk with your board. It's difficult at points, but especially around security or system availability or scalability. We do we have a quarterly board meeting, and we set aside, just a small section of the IT piece for security, for instance, and we go through the risk log, and we, throw it right in their face, and that's how we got extra dollars, right? So you could use it as either a tool, or it might, I'm not going to lie to you, it could come back and whiplash on you, because they'll say, how could you let this risk get so out of hand, right? How did you let this happen, rather than, let's get this fixed? How can I help you get this fixed? That is a great question. I don't have an answer to it, but I would suggest more communication is better than less communication.
So at that point, are you having to identify risk that you've brought through your CEO but has not been addressed? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
And how does that go? How do you reconcile that later with your CEO?
It all depends on the board.
Okay.
It depends on the board. There are friendly boards, and there are other boards that are, again, independent, really strong independent board members. And those really strong independent board members can be your allies too.
Okay.
So you do have to have that conversation. You can't spring it on your CEO that says, hey, I'm going to tell everybody that we have this security issue, or that we can't scale, or
But I'm assuming you've had that conversation and at some point you feel obligated.
Yes, and
to
you
bring
just say
it
it, it's part of
forward.
my job, if I have got to present this.
Yeah.
you know. And
But then do you go
it's a
back
tough
and talk
tension.
to the CEO and say, look,
Yeah.
now that this is out in the open, we're gonna have to put a plan
Right,
together.
right.
And you're
Yeah.
gonna have to help me now.
Especially if you have outside investors. Outside investors want to know, because the reason they bought your company is they want to resell it. And if they go to sell it again, and the buyer comes in and says, look at all these
Yeah, security
vulnerabilities
holes,
you
yeah.
have, look at all this technical debt you have,
Mhm.
it's gonna backfire. So in the long run, the hard discussion with the CEO prior to the board meeting is the best discussion you could have. Like,
Okay.
I'm curious about a couple of areas that you spoke to primarily would be the return on the investment and the people leadership kind of awareness. Do you have quantifiable ways of demonstrating ROI on people leadership?
I don't. Yeah, it's a necessary evil, right? The
Yeah.
people leadership is a necessary evil. But if you have fewer people leaders and stronger people leaders, again, that's going to reflect better on your budget, for one. Because you'll have more engineers getting more work done. So that larger team should lead to a higher ROI. I don't have any statistics to back that up, but that's the theory. So you got to look at that management as a sunk cost. But it is truly management then. It's not a doer and a manager, right? So you can predict their output. Their output's zero, should be zero. It's holding the team together, it's doing retention, training, bringing up skill sets. You concentrate on that and make the engineering team.
And that's the output, perhaps, of quantifying that.
Yeah. It's the success of the department, right,
Yeah.
overall. I'm more successful this year, I have more throughput. Look at my stats from, getting more projects done.
One more
Throughput, less
question.
cost.
Yes.
How would you communicate the benefits of agility and priority to a board that has 12 really important projects that they want done now?
Yeah, that's a good one. It all comes down to, I'd say, from my point of view, risk to the company, whether it be security, risk from losing business to a competitor, risk of not delivering on a promise, compared to, this is where a strong PMO comes in, compared to the throughput you have capable, and you leave it up to them and say, we cannot get all 12 done. Force rank it, and which could be put off or reduced. Another tough discussion, but again, if they know they're not going to get all 12 done, it just doesn't happen, right? They're going to have to duke it out for the limited resources. Otherwise, you tell them, if you want all 12 done, this is what you are going to need, and the bucket now goes to here.
Data.
And I think when they see this, they go, you know what, that project for the CFO could wait till next year. That other one, it's not so important. Let's not do that. That's not really adding value. I will tell you, we probably spend more money adding features to products and websites than are needed. I mean, that ever be used. And it's just ignored because more is better, and that's a really tough discussion to have. Stop adding stuff. People aren't using the stuff they already have.
Absolutely.
So.
Kevin, thank you. Couple of things before we close up. Speaking of AI, Kevin brought up a great point. Next Wednesday night, I am having an event for the C-level group on some actionable ways to make sure that your innovators in your organization can use ChatGPT and other large language models without risking all of your data and all of your intellectual property. If your C-levels might be interested in that, have them contact me. The next meeting, as a reminder, is in July. I believe it's the 16th. Should be a good one as well. Tell your friends about this meeting. It's important that we keep a lot of people in here and we have a lot of diverse opinions to make sure that the group grows and we can bring value to each other. Thanks for coming today. Have a great day.